Hey everybody, Matt Johnson here. It was a sentencing shocker.
The words I would say have no meaning, and I'm going to leave it there.
Get him out of here.
The confessed Long Island serial killer now spending the rest of his life behind bars.
I actually think, Matt, we will see more victims.
That's Dr. Debbie Goodman here to help answer your questions. Was he working alone? Are there more victims? And what's next in this case? Now, the case of Rex Heuermann. Here to help break it all down is a very special guest. We have Dr. Debbie Goodman, criminologist, professor, and author, one of my good friends, friend of the program. Thank you for being here. And I guess, when we're talking about this serial killer and the sentencing day, it didn't go anywhere near what we expected. Is this the end for this guy?
Certainly. Well, good afternoon, Matt, and always a pleasure and honor to join you on really what is such a historic, significant, important day, really for the spotlight to be on what we call victim restoration. So we understand victimology. We can never fully restore victims' families, victims' friends, but really the importance of today was to give them the opportunity to express, after, for many of these individuals, years and possibly decades of being, without the answers, without closure, without resolution. So at least that came about today. And, it's debatable, right, in terms of who is this person and what comes next. I actually think, Matt, we will see more victims. Now, again, 7, 8, could there be upwards of 12? I actually think so. Why? Because we know where the remains were found along the Gilgo Beach, hence the first 4 victims of the Gilgo 4. And then from there, of course, further analysis and investigation. So I don't think we're done for many reasons. We know that there will be forthcoming conversations with the FBI. But I do feel that with these psychopathic killers, and, that's how I regard him and many of those who have come before him, meaning characteristics of psychopathy, of course, they lack remorse, they're manipulative, narcissistic, grandiose, and they really, Matt, want to bring what unfortunately they accomplished, and that is the humiliation, degradation, and violation to these victims.
Yeah, and here is the sentencing, and we'll get into what he did or didn't say, but here's what the judge told him, and here's how he left the courtroom.
And the maximum of your life, all of those sentences to run consecutive with each other.
Nothing further.
Get him out of here.
So, the courtroom decorum, sure, they're very happy. I'm surprised that the judge allowed that to happen. The judge really was emotional here. But, are we ever going to learn more? Was this guy acting alone? Are there more victims? He pretty much stayed silent, and I'm going to play that next, but I wanted to get your answer first.
Yeah, I would say, Matt, yes and yes. Will we know more? I believe we will. Why? For a variety of reasons. Remember, when we talk about Rex Heuermann, when we talk about Jeffrey Dahmer, Ted Bundy, Dennis Rader, Gary Ridgway, David Berkowitz, believe it or not, they like the attention. They like when they're being talked about. They like to read about themselves in the media, social media. But guess what? He's 62 years old. Being in prison is no picnic. Maximum security prison, as already an older citizen who likely, through the years may experience some type of health decline. And so he will want to reappear. Now, when that is, who knows? But he will want to appear as being relevant. They don't want to become irrelevant. They don't want to be forgotten. So we will hear more from him. And very good question you ask about, did he act alone? Absolutely, I believe so. Why? Because remember, back to psychopathy, these individuals think they are the smartest people in the room. They think they're criminals who won't get caught. They feel far superior to everybody else in society. to include local, state, and federal officers and agents. So they don't want to take on, if you will, a secondary co-defendant, co-partner. They want to do it all on their own, singularly. They're also, Matt, what I refer to as a criminologist. They're hedonistic killers, you see. And at the heart of hedonism is pleasure. This individual, I assure you, derived pleasure, sadly, tragically, from beginning, middle to the end of how he victimized his victims.
Yeah, it was really brutal in nature, what's been disclosed so far by investigators after this 17-year plus reign of terror by this serial killer. And after all of that, after he surprised everyone, after claiming his innocence through this process and then changing his plea a couple months ago to guilty, then he really doesn't disclose a whole lot, which surprised a lot of people, including me. I've been in court with him. But let's play it.
Mr. Heuermann, is there anything you wish to say before I pronounce sentence?
Yes. There are no,
Stand up.
there are no words I can say. I am responsible for what was said in this room today. The words I would say have no meaning, and I'm going to leave it there at this time.
Speak up.
What did you hear and what didn't you hear?
Right. Well, the first platform of what we heard and did not hear for me was a theory that I like to refer to when it comes to these types of brutal, barbaric killers, and that's CPA, Control, Power, Authority. So I still feel that by him withholding a great deal of information, and remember, he gave us no level of specificity, no detail. He didn't even apologize. The judge said to him directly, right, in that interactive piece, well, I'm sure you're sorry. Are you sorry? Do you feel sorry about what you did? And really, press for that answer. But the reality is, Matt, these individuals, to include Rex Heuermann, they want to control the whole narrative. They want to control how they perpetrate their crimes, again, beginning, middle to the end. And even in the courtroom environment, they want to do what they want to do. They'll acquiesce mildly only because he had to be there and he had to plead guilty. But other than that, the whole world wants to know why. We have no idea why. I have a few theories we can talk about, but we want to know that from all of these people.
And here is the judge calling him a coward. So on the end of this, I'm going to want to hear what you think he's thinking as he's being called that by somebody else, and he can't do a thing about it.
Mr. Heuermann, as Mr. Tierney said, I know that you're sorry that you got caught. I assume that you're sorry for what you've done to your wife and children. Are you a little bit sorry for what you did to these poor innocent women? 8 women that you strangled to death, at least 8 that we know of. Are you at least a little bit sorry for that? Yes?
Yes, I am.
You know what? You've been described as a very big man, but you're a disgusting and despicable small man, if you're a man at all. And you're a coward.
So what do you think was going through the killer's mind during that?
Oh, he did not like that at all, Matt, because, again, an interesting theory in criminology we refer to as Lilliputian theory. Lilliputian, little, small. And even though certainly physically his stature might be large in terms of his height, his breadth and whatnot, but these individuals, they do not like to be criticized or called names. And, we can almost remind about Brian Koberger and so many discussions that took place, and, some of the conversations that I had with colleagues from Court TV. And I remember we used the word failure for him, because really he prided himself on his intellect and his knowledge, but he was a colossal failure. And I think the same about Rex Heuermann. Yes, an architect, but wow, almost hiding in plain view. And we could talk about that too. how these individuals are so good at concealment, but also compartmentalizing their conduct, which is really eerie and really chilling when we get to the family conversation.
Yeah, and I wanted to play a little bit of that for you right now. Much of today's proceedings, the sentencing, was with the cameras not rolling. And then afterwards, there were press conferences by various people, including Gloria Allred and some of the victims' families. That's what I want to play for you right now, and just get your take on how the victims are holding up after all of this.
Family members of the murder victims painted a true portrait of their loved ones in a way that only family members can do. They described them as important and often essential members of their family, who loved and were loved by their families, and who contributed in a significant manner to the lives of their families, often financially, emotionally, and physically, by hugging and kissing their children and other members of their family and sacrificing for them. They were not just human. They were good, caring people who mattered to their family and friends and to their communities. All had hopes for a better life for their children, for themselves, and for their family members. All of my clients who spoke today honored their loved ones' lives. The defendant will never be able to say that he honored his family, because he only brought shame upon them.
I just want to thank everyone who spent time on this case, listening to our voices and giving my mom and all these other ladies a chance to have their voices heard. This has been a long day coming, and from this day forward, stop saying his name, stop putting his face everywhere. Put the girl's face, put their names, and make it known that we are the ones who live on for them. Rex will never matter, and he is nothing to us, and it should be nothing to any of you. That's all. I wouldn't say comfort, but it's a day that I've been thinking of my whole life. The chance to finally speak up for her, it gives me comfort for her, knowing she can finally lay down, rest in peace, and he can't hurt anybody else. That's what brings me comfort, not him.
So we're seeing a reoccurring theme here from both the judge and Gloria Allred about putting shame on his family. Why do you think that that's important for him to hear?
Well, it's important because what happens with this individual, and again, others who have preceded, they too have families. Rex Heuermann, Asa Ellerup, the wife, Victoria, the daughter, Christopher, the son. And yet, Matt, what happens is the way these people operate, they dehumanize victims. They don't look at them as human beings. They look at them as objects and items. And, this whole idea about this individual having a blueprint, the blueprint is associated with his trade and profession. But the fact that he would call these barbaric, brutal murders part of the blueprint is just absolutely eerie and chilling, and I think reinforces in my mind how far removed he was from any level of humanity, decency, and even recognizing the magnitude of the victimization. But I'm so, impressed and delighted with how these victims spoke and with such heartfelt sentiment for their loved ones. But we do know the critical role this part of the criminal justice process plays so that these victims, family members can have their voice, can remember, respect, and recognize the beautiful lives, not only individually, but collectively.
Yeah, and the victims, here are their pictures right here. Melissa Bartholomew, Megan Waterman, Amber Lynn Costello, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, Jessica Taylor, Sandra Costella, Valerie Mack, and Karen Vergata. Really important that their families were there, but they have to be re-traumatized through much of this process.
Yes, unfortunately, that is true. And so what we know about victimology is that there are three categories, if you will: primary, secondary, tertiary. The primary, of course, are our 8 victims. They are the recipients, unfortunately, of the devastation that this individual endured. Secondary victimization, we look toward family members and friends because now they live with the grief. And you're 100% right that today was traumatic because they had to relive and actually saw face to face the individual who took the lives of their loved ones. But it was also victorious because they have some answers, they have closure, and there is resolution, knowing that this individual stays incarcerated for the rest of his life. And then the tertiary victims, of course, would be all of society. We didn't know the 8 victims. We don't know anything about the Heuermans. However, we are caring, kind, heartfelt individuals who were absolutely saddened and sickened by what's happened.
What do you make of the fact that his wife wasn't there? She was there when she was shooting the documentary. I mean, in the prior court proceedings, I was in court with her. I've interviewed her on her front lawn after she appeared to be devastated after her husband was arrested. What do you make of the fact that she wasn't there and his family wasn't there? Bryan Kohberger's family was.
Right. I actually think, based on what I read about Asa Ellerup and again, Victoria and Christopher, that they really wanted today to be all about the victims' families and that being the spotlight, and not to potentially cloud or disrupt via their presence, really what today was designed to be. So I think it was a prudent decision. I think it was a cautious decision, and quite frankly, compassionate from the standpoint of them, not appearing.
Here's what Asa Ellerup had to say outside of the courthouse when he changed his plea from not guilty to guilty.
They have no knowledge, no involvement, or any connection to these heinous acts.
My thoughts and prayers are with the victims and their families. Their loss is immeasurable, and the focus should be on them at this time, and to my family as they navigate through this very difficult time.
How did you not see what he was? How did you not see what he had done? You were living with him.
Sir, the district attorney's office has thoroughly investigated these crimes, okay? It has been proven.
You were living in the same house with him.
She was away.
What were the
She was
signs?
away each and every occasion. We've answered this 1,000 times, okay? You guys have the bail applications. You have the investigation.
Believe that he was.
That is the question she gets all the time when she's in public is, what did you know and what are you not sharing?
Right. So believe it or not, Matt, I believe her and I believe other family members. Here's why. Because even if we move away from the Heuerman case for a moment and just go back to Dennis Rader, bind, torture, kill, 10 murders. I remember seeing an interview with his daughter, Kerry Rawson, who really described her father, as being a loving, devoted father and having had a very pleasant childhood. And then we segue to Gary Ridgway, the Green River killer with 49 murders. And his son Matthew spoke on behalf of his father, saying that his father really attended, his school activities and was involved in his life. So believe it or not, I would believe these families. I think if anything, they may, let's say, have thoughts about their loved one's characteristics, meaning, maybe the individual's a little internal. Maybe they're a little odd or sometimes bizarre with their conduct, right? As we talk through the Bryan Kohberger case, and we think the siblings felt that and such. But who would really put the dots together and say, okay, the individual to whom one is married, the individual who is the father, the individual who is the architect and goes to an office, in Manhattan and, interacts with co-workers. It's such a far reach for most people. And I do understand this type of very depraved mind of these people as I've been studying them my entire career. And so again, they're very good at almost like hiding in plain view, if you will. When they're dad, they can be dad. When they're husband, they could be husband. When they're architect, they can go to their job. And it's very, very unlikely to connect a dot between potentially odd or bizarre behavior and go full scale into a serial or mass murder.
Yeah, he definitely compartmentalized. He was definitely living a double life. And I wonder how much of that double life he was initially living with his attorney, his defense attorney, when the charges first came. Because his defense attorney would go on court TV and say, my client is innocent. We're going to prove this. We have all of this evidence and all this and that. But then that changed, obviously. Here is what he said outside the courthouse today after his client was sentenced to life.
Go back to the dichotomy you spoke of.
Yes.
Almost like two people and you can compartmentalize or what have you. Do you believe there is a part of him that is genuinely sorry? Or do you think this is just words?
I don't know. I hope he is. After doing this for 35 years, I hope that I'm a good reader of people and I can judge how they express themselves and if it's sincere. I don't know. I would hope he would be. I can say that over the course of representing him, he has absolutely shown emotion, and it's genuine emotion. There's genuine sincerity. He's expressed. He's cried over the course of my representation. So I expect it's sincere. And I really think he wants to find out the triggers for why he did what he did.
Have you ever seen the
That's way beyond, my pay grade. It's not my world. But I do think there's a sincerity to his expression of some remorse, as well as trying to understand why he committed these crimes.
Michael, given what you've come to see from him, are you surprised he didn't have more to say in court today?
I probably would say yes to that. He's somewhat of a charismatic figure when you talk to him. He's engaging when you talk to him. And I did kind of expect that he would say more, but that was his choice.
Yeah, the judge also questioning whether or not he had any remorse. I mean, we're not really seeing it in the courtroom setting.
Yeah. To me, Matt, as a criminologist, zero remorse. Again, every name, if we want to just go down that list and that check mark and check them all off, from Jeffrey Dahmer to Ted Bundy, Dennis Rader, Gary Ridgway, Samuel Little, David Berkowitz, however far down the list we go, and Rex Heuermann, there is no remorse. Why? Because there's psychopathy, because they simply don't care. If and when we see any type of indication of emotion, I can assure you it's not for their behavior and their infliction of devastation. It's now the realization of, oh, wow, 62 years old, living the rest of my life in prison, not necessarily what I thought would happen. This is what I think he's thinking. And most of them think that they're getting away with it because of that grandiosity and narcissistic lens.
So will he tell the FBI the truth?
So that's a great question. I think he at some point will want to be engaging in conversation. But for me, there's that asterisk. I know these individuals. I know how they think. They're pathological liars. We know and understand it was part of the plea deal that he has to speak to these experts, and they will be among the best and the brightest throughout the country. But when we ask a psychopath to tell the truth, when they're already pathological liars, and that's who they are and how they are, for me, I'm on the fence.
Well, here is Gloria Allred speaking to that in what was part of the plea deal. So here we go.
As a condition of the defendant's plea and conviction to the murders, the defendant must cooperate with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit. They will learn a great deal about the defendant and how and why a serial murderer commits these heinous criminal acts and inflicts the ultimate crime, murder of vulnerable women.
I'm wondering if he agreed to it, because then once again, he has visitors and it's all about this guy. It's all about him, and he can tell them whatever tale he comes up with at the time. And he has a visitor from behind bars.
Very well said, very astute. I agree with that. I think, again, right now, everybody's talking about him. The whole world knows his name. But in short order, Matt, we know how this goes. He will become more or less invisible. Nobody's going to be that interested. And yes, by agreeing to this, he will have experts in the field of crime, law, and justice talking to him. But I like your word tale, because there's fact and then there's fiction. Of course, the whole world wants to know and potentially understand the facts as to the who, what, when, where, why, and how of these decisions he made. However, I think for some time, we're going to be going down the pathway of fiction. I think he will tell the tales. He'll make up whatever he wants, knowing that everybody's holding on to every word he says.
So I think that that's full circle then to the beginning of our conversation, that this is not the end. And we have much to learn from this psychopath. Dr. Debbie Goodman, thank you so much for your time. I hope to see you soon.
Thank you, Matt. Always a pleasure to join you.
If you would like to learn more about the case, please head to the video section of this YouTube channel. And while you're there, please hit the like, subscribe, and maybe share the episode. I'll keep you updated on this case and others. Take care of yourself. I'll see you next time.